Today we're covering 3 of my favorite crushing submissions. Now the reason I like these is because if you mess them up, you're not in a bad spot. They're low risk, high reward, which is what Jiu Jitsu is all about, right? Put yourself in a good position and stay there. So with that, let's jump in. Submission number 1, the modified soul taker. Now we've covered this submission in the past where we go knee on belly and then we use a gable grip behind our opponent's head to leverage our knee into their diaphragm, which is a great variation, but there is a tendency for your opponent's head to slip out if there's sweat involved. It becomes a little bit slippery and it's harder to maintain. So what we're gonna do to modify this is we're going to leverage twisting arm control and then the gift wrap. So as you can see in this example, I'm inside control. What I do is I begin to frame my north side arm across his neck. I then anchor my hand into his shoulder. I'm using downward pressure through my ulna bone into my opponent's neck. It's very similar to a paper cutter submission, but I'm not really looking for the submission here. I'm just using this so he tries to turn away from me to alleviate the pressure. Once he turns away to alleviate that pressure, it presents an opportunity for me to lock up that twisting arm control. I use my chest to trap the back of his top side arm or his tricep. Now that we have twisting arm control, we want to evolve this into the gift wrap. I'll take my free hand, fight through my opponent's armpit, and grab onto my own wrist. And then from here, I'm just keeping my chest pressed up against his back. This is a very secure and safe position for me. Now, a lot of people will transition to a back take from here, but sometimes it's fun to torture your opponent a little bit. And in many cases, if you complete this correctly, you will get the tap. So now that we have the gift wrapped all secured, I'm going to take my south side knee and place that into his ribs. Now, if you pay attention to where I'm putting my knee, it's very much in the middle from his armpit to his hips. I don't want to be too low and close to his hips. I also don't want to be too high and close to his armpit. I'm right in the middle, right where those floating ribs are. Once that knee is in place, I will take my other leg and put my foot flat on the mat. I'm using this to raise my level. Once I stand up or raise my center of gravity, it allows for that leverage that I need to get the submission. From here, I'm dropping all my weight through my knee into his ribs. At the same time, pulling up on the gift wrap and staying very firm in my planted foot. And as you can see, if your partner winces like that, you're doing it right. I like to think that I am trying to fold his body in half where my knee is pressing into his ribs. If you can focus on that, fighting his body to the ground through your knee while you're picking up on his head or his upper body with the gift wrap, this is going to put an immense amount of pressure on his floating ribs, his diaphragm, and his lungs. It makes it very hard to breathe, and not only that, it's quite painful. And as a common theme you will see throughout these submissions, if you mess this up by any chance, you're not really in a bad position. You can drop back into side control, you can drop into north-south. You're not in a compromised situation by messing this up. So if you aren't using this one yet, it's definitely worth the time to practice it. And I just want to take a quick break to give my sponsors, X Martial, a shout out. Not only does X Martial have the highest quality no-gi gear for adults and kids on the market, they also provide workout equipment and training tools, everything from resistance bands to grip work to abdominal work. You name it, they got it. On top of all that, they also have the X Martial Charity Initiative, where they help bullied or underprivileged people get help with their training fees and free gear. You're not gonna find a higher quality company out there. So if you wanna look as good as me and probably even better, get over to xmartial.com, use my code IRONWILL to save yourself some money, and look good while you sharpen your skills. All right, well, I think that covers it. Let's get back to the video. Next up, one of my favorites, twisting punch choke. And you will probably notice, if you're familiar with the Ezekiel choke or the no-gi variation, it's similar mechanically. Now, what's really cool about this submission is that you can be inside control and set it up exactly like we set up the last submission. But another place I like to hit this from is from a failed Kimura. So as you can see in this example, I get to the Kimura with my opponent, but he's great at defending. He's effectively defending the submission. So instead of getting frustrated and burning up all my energy trying to fight through a defense that's secured quite well, what I can do is step around to the back. And as you can see here, the way my hands are positioned for the Kimura, if I open my north side elbow, it creates a pocket that will fit his head perfectly. So as you can see, I loop my arm over his head and I'm right back to the gift wrap position. Now, once you're here, your north side hand will be holding onto his wrist. Your other hand, which is grabbing onto your wrist, releases that grip. You move your hand in front of his face. I like to create a knife with my hand, a nice flat surface, because it's easier to navigate through those tight areas in this position. And then once I'm able to get that knife edge to my opponent's neck, I create a fist. And I'm really wanting to focus the point of my pinky knuckle into the side of his neck. The sweet spot you're aiming for is about 2 inches directly under the ear. There's a muscle that runs diagonally through that area called the sternocleidomastoid. You're focusing the point of that pinky knuckle right into the belly of that muscle. If you're too far forward on the neck, it's gonna slip off and it's not gonna feel like much. If you're too far back, it's just gonna feel kind of like a weak neck crank, which isn't gonna do much but burn your own energy. You need to get right in the sweet spot right here. And once you're in that position, essentially what you're doing with both hands is a tricep extension. This tightens up the space where your other hand is. If your opponent doesn't tap at first, that's okay. Be patient. Nice slow squeeze all the way through, because this does turn into a choke. The last thing you want to do on any submission, especially the choking submissions, is go straight to 100% intensity right out of the gate. You want to start at around 30 or 40% and apply a slow increasing squeeze all the way through, because if it's not right, you're not blowing all your energy right away. You can always make slight adjustments, come back, start back over at 40% intensity, and slowly increase the intensity as you begin to lock that in. This is a great way to preserve energy, not blow your grips, and also just practice good jiu-jitsu. Now, this is a fun submission, but it is a painful one as well. So you want to take care of your training partners. Sure, in a tournament setting, you can full send this, but back at your home gym, take care of each other, go nice and slow on it, communicate with each other. You definitely don't want to full send this one right away because it gets brutal pretty quick. But regardless, I think this is a great one to add to your toolbox. If you aren't trying it, start repping it. Last but not least, the spine stretcher. Now, you probably have seen this called a couple different things. Every gym seems to have a different name for it. If you know it by something else, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to see what you guys are calling this. But if you mess this up, you're not in a bad spot, just like the other two, right? Low risk, high reward. So as you can see here in this example, I'm in side control and I'm going to switch to Kesakatami. Once I'm in this position, I like to make my opponent carry my weight. You can see that my hips are slightly elevated off the ground, but you also have to be careful not to overcommit your weight too far into your opponent, because if you do, it's really easy to get rolled. So you need to sit your weight away, but down. Make your opponent carry you, but don't overcommit, right? And this is something that you'll get used to through reps. If you're not getting it right away, that's totally fine. That's actually really normal and common, especially if you don't have experience here. So don't let that deter you. Once I'm in Kesakatami, what I really like to do is I bring my north side knee as close to my north side hand as possible. I'm then going to take my north side hand and grab the tendons of that knee. I like to call those the guitar strings. Grab onto those guitar strings. They make for a nice biological built-in hook. Now from here, this is already pretty tight for my opponents, but you're probably not going to get a submission just sitting here. Once I have this locked up, I'm briefly looking over my shoulder to get my eyes on where his legs are. In this situation, there will always be one leg that's closer to you and one leg that's further from you. You are going to aim for the leg that's closer to you. The way I like to run this is I'm looking for an overhook, but I like to go palm down into the mat. Once I've obtained that overhook, I'm going to take my hand palm side down and utilize a pancake grip on my inner thigh. Once I have that in place, all I have to do is round my back out and squeeze my knees together. What this does is it stretches my opponent's torso across mine, basically squeezing his lungs, his diaphragm, and his stomach to the point where he cannot breathe. Now, even though this one isn't really painful at all, it almost feels like it's squeezing all the air out of your lungs and you have no ability to breathe back in. So this is a very effective submission. And again, just like the others, you're in a safe place. If it doesn't work or if you mess it up, you can always drop right back into Kesakatami, or you can rotate right back into side control. So if you haven't tried this one yet, give it a try because it's safe, it's fun, and it works. With that, guys, if you have any of your own submissions that may be crushing in nature, or just maybe submissions in general from side control, let me know in the comments, right? I always say I'm not the only teacher here. Some of you blow me away with some of the stuff that you say in the comments, and other people come through and learn from that. So if you have knowledge to share, by all means share. We're building a community where we all support each other here, and I couldn't be more proud of it. I appreciate you guys. So with that, you know how we like to end them, sometimes backwards, always forwards. I'll see you in the next one.